6:30, so we'll call the work session of the mayor and council for the city of Snellville, Georgia on Monday, October 9th, 2023 to order. We have a quorum, everyone's here. We'll go through the really big business meeting that we have tonight. Got Associate Pastor Gerald Collins of Park Place Church for the invocation. Someone for the pledge.
We should have our esteemed attorney do it.
Do it. That would be nice.
Prodigal son.
Welcome him back in style.
He was lost and he found his way home. We've got the minutes for the September 25th meeting. Got invited guest, Principal Rodney Jordan, he'll be here. And then lead centers, is that Karen Foote?
Yeah.
Will be here. And then just one item of business, we've got a proposal from Collaborative Infrastructure Services for the traffic calming on Tanglewood. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Do we have any idea when they're starting?
Immediately.
Immediately?
We'll have an agreement drawn up and get it signed by all parties. Just agree to have the mayor sign it and at this amount, and we'll go from there.
So 3 months.
Do we need an amount on there, on that?
35,200.
200. Not to exceed that, yeah.
35,200.
And you should make the motion since you live there.
So that's just for Larry's services, is that correct?
That's for the construction drawings, the
Bidding,
bid
construction
package,
administration.
Okay,
getting it out to bid, and then managing the project.
okay.
Estimated construction costs are between $250,000 and $275,000.
For the 8,
Yeah, for all 8.
all 8.
Really? That's a
Yeah.
good price.
No, that's an estimate.
Yeah.
Graphic
estimate.
zoning installation.
But even so, even in that range.
I'm hoping it doesn't get there. I mean, consultants have to give you a little higher.
Oh, sure.
Excuse me, Michael, it went on long anyway.
He was looking right at you.
They're gonna give you a conservative number.
Those dang consultants.
We'll do that.
So you're here to tell us that the pavilion is not going to cost as much.
Exactly.
So should we approve it, should we ask for approval up to that amount, with a maximum of that amount, or what?
For the 32
35.
35,200.
Not
He's
to
got it
exceed?
listed
Not to
here as a
exceed.
lump sum fee.
Yeah, and then just leave the rest of the funding out of it. Then we'll have a contract.
You mean the funding for the,
Yeah, the 250 to 275, because that'll have to.
All we're doing is CIS, which is the
Well-
35,200.
I got that, I'm just
Okay.
asking, should we say up to 35,200?
Well, he's got it listed here as a lump sum fee for 35,200.
So that means it will be that number.
It will be that
Okay.
number.
That's the proposal.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about the.
Okay, then that's all for the regular meeting. Any correspondence?
No, ma'am.
City attorney's report?
No, ma'am. We're in good order.
Then we'll go to the discussion items, and we have an update of the Grove Gateway signage by Michael Kidd with Root Design. Yeah, let me scooch out of the way.
I don't think Michael needs any introduction.
No, good to see everybody again. We'll try to make this short and sweet, picking up from where we were last time. So we did this quick analysis. We talked about where we saw some gaps in the different elements that we had already on site. The pink elements are what was included in this current phase of construction for the Grove. The yellow areas are areas where we don't really have anything on the Grove currently. So last meeting we landed on these two spots. We had the original location of the pedestrian gateway, and then we talked about this area in the middle at the tree save as another area for one of these elements. So that would be the Grove sign. That's the first thing we're going to talk about, right there in the middle. And this is sort of where this is our starting point from the original video that we did. We had that placeholder, really just an identification marker at the tree save area, which started to become an interesting idea as an actual sculptural element in the park itself. So we talked a lot about that at the last meeting, and since then we sort of dove into the specifics of what that might actually look like. Seems like it would be a pretty easy thing, but there are a lot of little details to work out with an element like that. So starting with fonts, we looked at 20 or so different fonts. Joan actually narrowed down a bunch more to this for me to look at. So we were looking at things like the ability to read the letters in the landscape. That's one of the first and foremost things to look at. The sort of substantial nature of the font itself, the proportions and scale of that font once you get it out into the landscape and what that looks like. So going through all those different questions with each one of these fonts, the second one is the one that we landed on. We looked at the existing font at the parking deck, we looked at the font in the logo. We took all those factors into consideration, so that's the font that we selected. And you can look at that and think about it. If you have any comments about that, we can certainly respond to comments as needed. So once we did that, we wanted to see what that font would actually look like out in the space. So Joan printed full-size letters at the print shop. These are 5-foot tall letters. She and I talked a lot about what size this might be. We talked about, is it 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet? How big do these letters need to be? We both know from doing this for a long time that when you get particularly signage and letters out in the landscape, they're much smaller in the landscape than they feel like they should be. So 4 to 6 feet we felt like was the right range. We printed these out at 5 feet tall. Taped them to some cardboard boxes, put them in the actual spot where they would be, took a picture with me standing in front of them to see what that would look like. So that's a 5-foot tall letter out in the landscape. Stand a little bit further back and you get the sense of what that feels like relative to the scale of this site, with the mass of the tree save area above it, the scale of the library behind it, soon to be Market Hall on the other side, the lawn in front. So you take all that into account, and this started to feel like a pretty good size for those letters. At 5 feet tall, with that font, this is the actual dimension of what that sign would be. So it would be about 22 feet long, 5 feet tall. Looking at that, we said, okay, well that feels right for the size of the letters, but the fence seems to be in the way. So what do we do about that? Well, the fence needs to stay there to keep people out of that tree save area. We didn't really want to modify the fence, wanted to keep that consistent around the tree save. So the next option is to simply raise the letters up so that they're above the fence. We didn't want to raise them too high. We wanted them to kind of still fit with the landscape. Another consideration that we were looking at were people taking pictures in front of the sign. We think that's going to be a huge photo op spot for the park itself. So you can see at the current elevation, if you're standing in front of those, I'm only 5'8", and I'm blocking most of the letters. If you have a group of 10 people in front of that sign, you're not going to be able to read the sign. If the letters are a little taller, all of a sudden you can read the sign and see the people in front of that. So this is an elevation of what that essentially would look like at that height above the fence. So this is now about 8 feet tall to the top of the sign, roughly about 3 feet raised up to get above the height of the fence. And you can see with people standing in front of that, you can still see what that sign says without any trouble. So that sort of gives you the overall dimensions and proportion of what that starts to look like in the landscape. Again, this is a photo of the existing conditions that are out there now, so what does this look like in that spot? This is roughly what that starts to look like when we place it in the landscape. Again, we wanted to test this out in the landscape and look at it in a rendering to see if this is all making sense, and it still feels pretty good from a scale standpoint. It's making that big impact that we want, but it's not overwhelming. It just feels like a good scale in that setting. So this is, again, with the pavilion on the edge, seeing what that would look like if we put in a little ornamental landscape around that sign as a backdrop. So that gives you a sense of what that starts to look like with what's already built out there. So the next,
Could I ask,
yes.
what would that sign be made of?
So
Metal
that's
or-
what we're getting
Oh,
to
that's
next.
what we're
Yep.
going to, okay.
Yep, good
I think-
question.
Are you gonna carve them out of some of the granite boulders that we pulled out of the ground?
That would be Mount Rushmore.
We actually didn't think about that. That's an interesting idea. But great question and good segue. So materials was the very next slide. We have a bunch of different materials out in the park. We want this to feel like it makes sense in the park. We also want it to feel like a special element. So the different materials that we have out there, we have the wood decking for those seating areas on the terraces. We have the stucco walls. We have, of course, the mosaic bench at the splash pad, which is sort of its own special element. We have the granite wall with the sculptures in front of that. We have the split rail fence that we talked about. The steel structure of the pavilion. There's a lot of different things going on, and we want to make sure that this feels like it's part of the whole composition and not out of place. In addition to that, there's the whole idea of, well, how do you construct it? What is it, how do you actually build it? What are the maintenance issues? What is the finish? What is the color? What does it look like in the day and in the night? So thinking through all those different issues, we landed on doing a structure that would be clad with wood similar to the deck areas. So you've got two deck areas on the terrace on the Oak Road side of the park, and then the tree shade near the library, so this would sort of tie all that together around the lawn area. That Kebony material is also a durable material that lasts a whole lot longer than traditional pressure-treated wood. It's a premium product, so it looks really nice, but it's not exorbitantly expensive if one of these letters were to get damaged and you had to replace it or repair it. It also makes the construction much, much easier if it's constructed with the wood cladding. The letters themselves could be framed out of wood, or they could be framed out of steel. We haven't really gotten that far yet. We wanted to see what this would actually look like, what the surface of it would be. So that was what we landed on for the material choice. So this is starting to be what that would look like in the landscape. The next question then is, if we're cladding this out of wood, is it unfinished? The decks that are out there now are not treated, they're not stained, they're weathered Kebony, so they'll turn a kind of a silver gray color over time. We could go that route with it. We could paint it, we could stain it, we could seal it. There's all sorts of different finishes that we could put on this thing as well. One of the considerations there, in addition to ongoing maintenance, is, again, just the physical appearance of it. So you've got, what does it look like in the day, what does it look like at night? During the day, we saw those photographs previously with the landscape. It's got a dark background of the tree save area. We want this thing to kind of stand out and pop. The natural material does kind of tie in with the idea of the grove, the decks that are out there, the split rail fence. But another consideration is, if you're thinking about nighttime, I do really think that lighting this piece is going to be really important as a part of the sculptural element. moving forward. So when you have these evening, nighttime events, you're most likely going to want to light this sculpture. And in order to do any sort of color changing, so if you want to do red, white, and blue for 4th of July, or red and green for Christmas, or any of the other holidays or different events, it really needs to be white, or some shade of white. It needs to be a bright color. So that's pretty much where we landed with the color of it. Now, thinking about that, it could be white paint, it could be white stain, it could be white, a composite material that is prefabricated to be white. We think using a natural material makes a lot of sense. And then this is a playground manufacturer up in Canada that I've worked with in the past that does really, really nice work using natural materials. So they use Kebony, they also use black locust, they use high quality, sustainable, durable wood products on their playgrounds. And mostly what they do when they want to add color is they use a penetrating water-based stain. It's easy to apply, it's non-toxic, and it's very easy to maintain. It starts to fade over time. It's essentially like a whitewash, especially if you're using the color white. That's pretty much what you get is a whitewash. So you do still get some of the character of the wood itself. It's not like it's a solid painted color that might be composite or it might be natural. You still get the natural textures of the wood, but you have that bright enough color to reflect the light at night. One thing that we would recommend for making final decisions on things like this would obviously be to have, if a fabricator is selected to build this, to build mock-ups like we've done previously and test them with different types of light and see what that looks like before any final decisions are made. But we feel like this is a good starting point and that's the right aesthetic. We think that works for a lot of different reasons. So this is what that ends up looking like in your daytime photo. When we showed this initially to Butch last week, one of his questions was the depth of the letters, which you guys may be thinking about right now. There does need to be some depth, some thickness to the letters themselves, because these are three-dimensional objects that are just kind of standing up in the landscape, and they're basically going to be supported by some sort of infrastructure at the bottom of those letters. You need to have enough substance to the letters themselves so that you can anchor them to some sort of platform. That's probably some sort of steel framing that would anchor into the ground behind the landscape, so you wouldn't really see any of that. This, as it's drawn, is probably significantly wider than they need to be, but they would have some dimension, and that was always the intent, was that these would be three-dimensional letters. Another question that we asked when we were going through all these different design decisions was, how close are those to the fence? And that also means, do we want these things to be able to be touched by the public? Because if they're close enough, people are going to touch them. We decided against that and felt like these needed to be pushed back from the fence so that you're not invited to touch them, so that it doesn't increase the maintenance issues, that it's very clear that this is something that's not, to be touched and climbed and sat on and all those sorts of things. It's behind this fence that says, please do not enter this area. Does that mean everybody's going to stay off of these? No, it doesn't. We all know that, unfortunately, but the majority of the people will get the message and will stand in front of those. So that also gives us the room that we need to add some landscaping between the fence and the sculpture to hide the foundation, so that you don't see that. We'll talk a little bit more about the fence itself in just a minute. But that's basically where we landed with this first element. So I'm going to ask now if there's any questions or comments about where we are.
That lighting you showed, different colors like the red and green for Christmas. Now, would that come from a lighting at the base in this supporting structure, or where would that?
Potentially, that would be part of that structure. It could also be a lighting system that's in front of that, between the structure and the landscape. That's something that'll have to be worked out. What we do know is that with the lighting that we have in the trees, in the tree save area, we have the power that we need. Those are not, the tree save lights are not pulling much amperage off that circuit. They're on a dedicated circuit at the panel. So we can come off of the lines for the tree save lights to provide, this isn't gonna pull a whole lot of amperage either. So we do have the power that we need. We can go around the perimeter of that tree save to get lighting to this point. That's something that'll really need to be worked out in the fine tuning of how this is going to be fabricated and installed, and what's the right lighting system. We'll probably need to test a couple different types of lights. This is a really good question.
They'd be LED, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So what's the benefit of having the solid surface as opposed to a translucent front that is lit from inside?
Yeah, we looked at that as well, and that was where my head went first with this, was a translucent letter. I really wanted these things to be interior lit, and I mean, honestly, I wanted kids to be able to come up and touch them and have the touch change the color and all those sorts of things. The more we talked about that from a construction standpoint, maintenance, those become really difficult for all of those reasons. They don't, the material that you use, the polycarbonate material, or whatever the name is for the translucent material that they use on those, it just doesn't hold up as well, especially under the trees like we have here. That, I think, would start to look really bad after a few years. So, and that's also something that's, if it breaks, it's a lot more expensive to repair and replace those. So we opted to go this route, and for all those other reasons that we've talked about.
And with Kebony or something equivalent, can you color that to begin with? The
No,
penetrating stain, or you just have to wait for it to get around to being old like me?
That's a good question. I think you could probably color those right away, because they're not pressure treated, so they don't necessarily have to cure for the stain to adhere to the wood. Whether that the appearance would dramatically change as the wood weathers, I don't know that answer to that, but we could find that out.
And you can always restain if it gets too dark.
Right, but my fear is, because the Kebony is a fairly dark wood to begin with, that it would be kind of lost, even if you light it, particularly during the day, it would, in the shadow, blend into the background, because it is a shade area. So it has to be a material that's going to stand out from the background.
Yep, definitely. So an option that we could look at are
Legos.
Legos, exactly. My son has bins and bins of Legos. But no, I mean, there are composite options that we might want to consider for a lot of different reasons as well. And if we can find a composite that that looks nice aesthetically and has the right color, that may be the better option. It doesn't necessarily have to be Kebony. We're really going for that appearance aesthetically more than anything. We want to make sure it makes sense from a maintenance standpoint, from a durability standpoint, and for the lighting as well.
A lot of Kebony at the library.
Yeah, so it's a material that's out there, and it makes sense for that reason. But nobody's going to be well, people shouldn't be close enough to be able to tell with this, so.
Is that what the wood cladding is on the second floor of the library? That's Kevin.
And the floor that you ate dinner on the other day.
Well, she didn't actually eat off the floor.
You weren't.
Hey, we're all bulldogs here.
I was there until the mayor walked out.
Any other questions on this? These are all really good questions.
Is there any way, the only thing that bothers me about this is we take a picture of it, and I show my friend, and he says, where is that? Because there's groves all over. And I was just, is there some way to add a little Snellville something somewhere? Doesn't have to be necessarily legible, doesn't have to be big, but just something where somebody could say, well, what does that say? So you know it's not the Grove Apartments down the road here.
Right.
Well, they called it Tomlin, but,
No, the other way.
yeah.
Certainly, yeah. We'd have to retweak some things, but that's a good point.
We'll
No,
just paint Snellville, Georgia on the middle thing of the.
Yeah, I mean, just something that identifies it here. Or you could put the little at Snellville on the top right. Doesn't need to be big.
Okay. Anything else?
If we can go to the next one, we kind of tie in some of the landscaping.
Yep. All right, so the next is the pedestrian gateway. Again, that's at the left-hand side over there. So this is the area that we're talking about. You can see the pavilion going up in the background, the tree save area. This is our walkway coming into the lawn from the apartments. And we talked about doing some sort of archway, gateway, pedestrian entry feature at this spot in the last meeting. And again, Joan and I went back and forth with all kinds of different possibilities for the material of what this thing might be. We talked about, last meeting, we kind of agreed that we wanted it to be something that you would walk through. So from a hardscape perspective, again, we have all those different materials out there. Do we tie in the stucco wall that's right here? Do we kind of carry that element across the sidewalk? Do we tie in the granite from the wall around the tree save area? Is this an element made out of wood or out of steel? None of that felt right to us as we started sketching ideas out for what this might look like and feel like. So, I mean, I was really stumped on what we should do here. And then we had sort of a little serendipitous inspiration through Joan's father, who had been vacationing down at Cocoa Beach in Florida. And he sent her this picture from Cocoa Beach of this gateway through the mangrove trees. That's just carved out of the landscape. And when I saw that, I said, maybe we should just treat this as a landscape element instead of a hardscape element. And just that little shift started to make a lot of sense. So we played around with that, and we ended up with this rendering. So this would be, this could be a really simple structure, steel tube frame structure with some cable system, to grow vines on the arbor so that the archway itself is a landscape element. This is depicted to be a native vine called Carolina jessamine, which is a really dense, aggressive vine, but it's native to the area. It's evergreen, it's drought tolerant. It has lots and lots of yellow flowers through the growing season. It's a really good native vine. There are also several other native vines. We could do a combination of vines to provide some different colors. But I felt like that made a lot more sense tying into the grove and the landscape than trying to do this as a sculptural hardscape element that may not have made a whole lot of sense. So the other thing that I was alluding to previously, is that we could take that same idea and carry that in front of the split rail fence, in front of that grove element, so that you use that same vine growing on the fence itself and sort of tie those two elements together as well. So that's where we landed with this. And
If anybody's
feedback,
We-
questions, feedback.
We have an entry to the community garden that we have that vine growing on, if anybody's
Okay.
interested in seeing it.
I like it.
You what?
I like it.
You like it?
I think it, like he says, I think it makes the most sense for what we're doing. It just adds the grove being a landscape place, not a hardscape
What
place.
months is that in bloom? I'm trying to remember, in the spring, right?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Very early spring.
Yeah, that's what you're the
May.
master gardener.
Does
Very
it-
early spring, and the rest of the year, right, Betty Ann, it would just be green.
Yeah, dark green.
Does it attract anything? Like, are we gonna have a
Small
bee,
children?
a bee problem, or?
No, I mean, it's not gonna attract.
You-
it's not
I've never seen
that it would be-
bees on it at
No.
the.
It's not a pollinator type
Okay.
thing.
No.
No, it's not a,
We use that in front of the Grove sign so nobody climbs on it.
Yeah, there's an idea.
Thought that was poison.
And you could weave in something else that blooms later in the year.
Sure, so there are, like I said, there are a handful of other good native vine options. This was just one that we thought ticked a lot of boxes. But certainly, we could go through the different vines that are available and have everybody look at that and look at the bloom times and the colors and see what makes sense. But really, it was just the idea of getting a vine on that structure.
How long would it take to grow to be substantial enough? How long did it take at the community garden to actually look like an actual arbor arch rather than a bunch of pipe and cable with some?
it grows
Couple of
fast.
years, I'd say, to,
Yeah.
2 years tops.
2 years it'll be, you have to be cutting it back. It really grows quickly.
Do you agree, Betty? Okay.
And we've got some stuff that flowers, I don't know what that stuff is at the lake. I mean, that,
Oh, well, we've got that on our
Yeah.
arbor that we have to keep.
but I mean, there's some vines that flower all year round.
Yeah, I have bushes that, I guess it's a morning glory, some sort of purple viney flower, invasive, but it is pretty, that tries to take over my bushes, so.
what about climbing roses? How would they do, Betty Ann? No?
No.
Okay, just curious.
A lot of work, I think.
Besides which, you walk, if one comes down with the thorns, there you go.
Okay.
Too many
Just-
diseases. Too
This
many diseases.
Too many diseases, okay.
This is obviously, it's budget friendly too.
Yeah.
But, I mean, how many places, when Michael showed us this, I went to my pictures, and surely y'all do the same thing. When you see an arch, you have a picture taken underneath it. And I've sent him one from Portland, I sent him one from Cake Bread Cellars out in Napa, I mean,
Some of
it's
us
just,
don't have 5 weeks vacation.
it's just, I was working in Portland.
Yeah,
It's a working vacation.
you're working on vacation.
Yeah, would you go to Portland unless you had to work? But it is, I mean, it's just, gonna be, I think it's gonna be popular for pictures. I think it looks great, and tying it in to the landscaping around the other sign, and you could put at Snellville in that.
Oh, yeah, and
You
you
know,
could also extend
attached to
it to
the-
cover up part of that wall on this.
Yeah, because that wall looks rather abrupt
Stark.
and hard,
Yeah.
so.
Looks like a
Some
fallen arch.
Shrubbery in front of it or
Well,
something.
you could actually just put a lattice and the vinyl just
Yep.
follow them down.
Yeah, good idea.
Okay.
So, good, thumbs up on both?
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
So we're gonna look at some colors
Right.
for the sign?
The sign.
For the lettering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the next step for that really is in the fine details of how
Yeah.
that thing's gonna be constructed and, I think it's some shade of white, for the letters.
You could go toward ivory. It's still
Yeah,
somewhere between
yeah.
white and
I
ivory.
mean,
Should be fine with the.
As we all know, there are probably 200 different shades of white. That can be narrowed down and you can look at samples just like we did, for all the other stuff.
Just like the play structure you showed. I mean,
Yeah.
it's,
Right. Okay.
It'll
Great.
change over time and the seasons anyway, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
Good
Well, I'll
job.
follow up with you and Matt.
Yeah.
And we'll get this.
Tony,
Great.
did you see the structure that we were talking about, the pavilion that's?
Oh, yeah, I got it. It's different from last time I was here.
Just to the, just to the
Tony
left
still
of the
thought we were
rocket.
getting a metal tree.
Okay. If anybody wants to see it, here's what our arbor at the community garden looks like now.
oh, yeah. It's always looked good.
And how many times has that been cut back? A lot.
Oh, boy, must be.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuff like that'll take a lot of trimming. Well, Michael, thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming out.
Thank you.
All right, Butch, ongoing projects?
All right, talking of the town center, the pavilion decking is underway. The bark wrap is done. It looks really good. Different, unique, I tell you. Smith Built, you probably noticed they're going vertical with an elevator tower out there. As I said last time, we've gotten all the rock out of there. It's gonna be somewhere around I think the cost somewhere around $9,000 for the rock that we hit, as opposed to the parking deck where it was, $509,000. Roadway striping is the last thing for the right-of-way for Amshiv. That should happen in the next week or so. David Bruner came to town today, and we started working on the 2024 joint expense budget with Casto, everything from utilities to maintenance. We talked about things as simple as a porter service. When people eat lunch out there and they leave stuff on the table, drop stuff on the ground, somebody needs to clean it up.
Yeah.
And so, if you keep it clean, you're gonna put it in their heads. Anybody who's out there, they're more likely to keep it clean. So, I think they're gonna be very, very supportive there. We are addressing the kiosk issues. Why one ad keeps showing up from Rove IQ. I'm not sure that has been removed yet, but it should be in the next 24 hours.
What about the headlights in the Grove
That's,
area?
the Hodges and Hicks are working on that.
Okay,
We talked to Roger White today.
okay.
Let's see, Crooked Can, there's a meeting tomorrow between Casto and Crooked Can, the potential tenant in the market building. We'll know more after that. I'll let everybody know, but we're very optimistic that situation is gonna proceed.
Are they wanting to do multiple concepts like we had talked about originally, or what?
They would do, they as an entity would be the major attraction, a brewery with beer and wine.
Brewery, okay.
And then they have vendors, like a food hall, included in there, and they want local people. They want local vendors. Of course, they can bring as many as we need, but they also would have maybe 2 or 3 other areas, like a butcher shop, like food to go, prepared food to go, things like that. We don't know exactly yet, but it's something that they are very interested in, and I think we should be very interested in trying to work out a deal with them. So that's kind of what they're trying to do tomorrow as far as talking about leasable space, pricing, CAM and everything else. So it really, like I said, I'm optimistic that I can bring something back to you guys in the next couple weeks. And I really think, and talking to Todd and Barbara, you may not have been there yet, in our little pre-meeting, a visit is probably in order. If this goes well, and they are very positive about the financial aspect, if they share some of their financial information, this isn't, from everything we can tell, this is not a highly leveraged firm. That they're pretty strong,
Where are
very
they
strong.
based? Where are they?
They actually have two locations, which
One in Florida.
is really cool because one's in Ohio and one's in right outside Orlando in Florida. So they're two wildly different markets and they're very successful in both. And they appear to have shaped themselves to the region rather than just having a hard concept and
Right.
forcing it in. So that looks like it would work well for us.
So when I bring the information back, we really do need to talk about a visit. As far as the upstairs is concerned, there are a couple of event space operators who are looking at the property, looking at the space. So, it's moving forward with folks that I think are a lot more stable, a lot better financed, and it's a really good concept for our space. If anybody's interested, we do have a market OAC meeting over at Smith Built's trailer Thursday at 10 a.m. Sidewalk improvements, Skyland Construction, I know y'all have probably all driven through there. I mean, the progress is really good. They've done a lot, they've had great weather. There's one area down there that we've had to make a change. When you get to Springdale and you turn to the right, there's drainage that's going down Springdale to the little creek, maybe 800 feet down the street. It had, initially, the drainage was planned for the north side, or the right side as you go towards Tom's house, if you will. And now, because of all the busy area, the trees, there's a little footbridge, there's piping where it enters into the creek, Larry thinks it's best to move to the other side. There's going to be some savings, there's going to be some cost, probably going to cost a little bit more, but there really is it's a straighter shot, and it's going to be a little easier, and the water should flow better, especially where it empties out. So we're working with the property owners there. I don't think the folks on the north side, they were hoping to get some new grass and get new mailboxes. And Matt, you spoke to those folks, and the people on the south side. I guess there's just one property owner on the south side, as opposed to 3 or 4 on where it was. So I don't think you'll get a call. I don't think, but just let me know if you hear from anybody down there. So we're kind of proceeding with that change. The county at Valley Creek, they're unbelievably ahead of schedule. I talked to Jimmy Powell, their manager, today, and he's saying they're going to be done 3 months ahead of time. Both entrances to Valley Creek are open now. One was closed for a while, so traffic is flowing, and that's Dickerson down there, and they've done a lot of work for us. We know they do a good job. City business cleanup. I don't know if y'all have looked up on the hill at 78 and 124, but trucks are hauling the debris away. So it's going to be cleaned out, cleared out, and the property will soon be, they're appraising it, it soon will be offered for public bid. So we'll see where that goes. And cold weather for anybody dealing with weeds and overgrown grass, cold weather is a welcome thing to run in here. So that's already knocked down some issues, but if you see anything, know of anything, let us know. I think we had a report about somebody thought it was a sewer line that had broken down at the Crestview, the development next to, and it was not. It was a leaking fire hydrant. So little difference between treated water and sewer. Everybody jumps to that conclusion. Let's see. Mayor and council input on development and zoning. Regular task force. Everything I hear from Jim Summerbell and Jonathan Corona, the input has been very good. They're adding it to the update, and that's proceeding according to plan, on schedule. That is a deadline that we have to have that approved by February or in February by DCA, and we'll meet that easily. Grayson Parkway and 78, the preliminary site plan there is awaiting the package sales determination. Maxie says that he needs to know what's going to happen there before they bring anything forward there. Redevelopment plan there. In package sales, lottery delayed until October 23rd. We're handling all questions that come in. Things have kind of quieted down. We'll see what happens in the next few days.
How are we gonna draw that? What's gonna be? I mean, literally draw it out of.
Funny you
water?
should ask.
We were talking about that in the pre-meeting. We're working on that.
Okay.
We're working on some kind of bingo ball machine or something to be able to put the balls in and let it spin around and spit one out.
We used to have some of these those that we played bingo with our grandsons, but I don't think we have them anymore, do we? I mean, literally, they were bingo ball machines.
I don't know.
Whether or not we can satisfy everybody with the process, I don't know, but we're gonna try. So, Briscoe Park, as far as the community recreation center, all RFQs have been reviewed and we've created a short list. We've knocked 16 proposals down to 5.
Wow.
And it was, the cream kind of rose to the top. If everybody had had a chance to read all those, it was pretty easy to come up with definitely the top 4. And we added the best of what we felt was the second tier. So you're gonna hear some good proposals from 5 very capable, well-financed, well-staffed firms, and we're going to try to do that. We're going to send the information out. We have some guidelines that we want to make sure they address in their presentation. So we'll send that out tomorrow. Matt will be sending that out, and we're shooting for the end of this month. The 30th, 31st, and the 1st, Matt.
That's correct.
So, and that will be Matt, myself, Lisa, and 3 council members, so.
Up to 3 council members, yeah.
Okay.
Can we use the bingo ball to pick the counts? No.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
We continue to work with the county on the old library transfer. I think they're still kind of taking inventory, and I'm hoping that we have some type of an understanding shortly. North and Wisteria, I'm working on follow-up meetings. I have 3 scheduled on Wednesday, and I'm hoping to get 3 more signatures. There's about 9 parcels there, and so we're trying to get everybody. Nobody has complained about the pricing, the numbers. It's just getting signatures and getting all the forms. Brian helped us a lot on, because we didn't realize that there were a lot of agreements that the owners have, so it had a few extra signatures to get. Traffic calming initiatives, the CIS proposal on agenda tonight. Larry also included, as we talked about, the estimated construction cost, which we're trying to work into the proper budget area, whether it's ARP, whether it's SPLOST. We'll have some options for you and some ideas and recommendations before we get to the bid. So we'll work with that number. I think it's going to be high, but that's the number we'll work with. And that's about all I've done.
All right, that brings us to the end of the work session, so is there a
Can I
motion?
ask a question?
Sure.
I noticed at the library today, they have their flag at half-mast, and I looked on the internet, and flags like at the US Capitol are at half-staff. Can we lower ours in support of Israel?
We should be able to if that's,
Okay.
And it seems like half of the flags I see are half-staff, and the other half are not.
Yeah, I looked, and they did lower it at the US Capitol,
It's
and,
for the dead Americans though, I think, more than
well,
the Americans that were killed over there.
We'll take care of that.
all righty. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
There's a motion, is there a second?
second?
Motion and second, all in favor? Yay. We'll see y'all in there. It is 7:21.